Good evening, everyone, and thank you for being here today. This year is during the International Women's Day theme. They are talking about breaking the bias. As I was reflecting on this theme, I remembered my father who was known to break biases every time, everywhere. Sometimes he even broke a bias, such as for education. When I scored badly at school, he'd say, "Just don't fail next time." He was an enabler. While ready and while I was reading this news in on a completely different note, as I was reading this news on Ashley Barty's retirement at 25, I was wondering if the need to growth and to grow so fast and to grow exponentially can lead to burnout. This is a classic example of growth, and it is not only about career success. Then what is it all about? As I grew as a person, as my father enabled me as a person, as my parents enabled me as a person, as Bento coach supported me and helped me grow as a businesswoman, my family, friends, and co-founders have been my cheerleaders. I've been enabled. Are we all being enabled? So growth for me has not been about winning, but it's been about adding value. Has Ashley Barty's decision been enabled? Is it her decision? Is she's taking it as if she's informed about it? Obviously. So at Bento Coach, what we do is we help these great conversations. We make them bespoke and continuous. This conversation about growth, this conversation through Forthright conversations is our intent to explore what makes our life fulfilling and happy, regardless of success, achievements, and fame. So on that note, I would like to introduce to you our panelists and our moderator for today. Starting with Dimple Sha, a compulsive reader, traveler, and a lover of chocolate. She also says she likes French fries. She creates magic by writing and calls it cursive meditations in ink on paper. Dimple moved to Hong Kong over a decade ago and promptly gave up finance career for her love for writing. Her short fiction stories and essays have been published in American, British, and Australian literary magazines. She speaks German and Mandarin fairly fluently and is currently enrolled in the prestigious MFA program in fiction at Warren Wilson College in North Carolina, USA. Welcome, Dimple. Sadhna, a qualified doctor, a lecturer in her past life, medical advisor, a regulatory and clinical research head, global medical head for innovation patented portfolios, and a head medical affairs for India and emerging market for branded generics portfolio are some of the many hats Sadhna has donned. Passionate about research and innovation, she has experience in designing blueprints for new fit-for-purpose medical organizations. Sadhna believes that purpose fuels passion and that in turn supports commitment. A forthright person, Sadhna says that clarity breeds trust. Roshan Poncha, a chartered accountant by profession and an artist at heart. Having worked with a few large corporates, she's put her career on back burner to raise her two lovely children. Roshan has since used this opportunity to devote some time to follow her passion for performing arts. An actor and a theater artist, she's been on the Chennai theater scene for the past 6 years. Roshan has been a juvenile diabetic since the age of 2, and here's to break the bias. She's done wonderfully well. If you want to learn some amazing music, then she's the best teacher anyone can have. Anu Ramani, signing in from the UK, Anu is the managing director of Isoline Communications, a multi-award winning specialist marketing company. She founded it 7 years ago. She has over 2 decades of experience in marketing in Asia, Europe, and Africa, and for world's top tech brands. Anu believes that reinvention is the key to success. Her world exposure is her strength, and she considers herself lucky to be able to travel and reinvent. And finally, our moderator, Vikas Mehra. He has a 30-year career in management consulting, advisory, and banking business across Asia and Europe. He's currently managing director at the HSBC Global Services Limited. He volunteers at Embrace, a D&I resource group focusing on race, ethnicity, and cultural inclusion. Vikas enjoys travel, photography, music, sport, visual art, and has had two exhibitions of his work of art. His Instapage, zen.zaf, has some stunning coffee sleeve art if you want to see it. He believes that curiosity is the catalyst to growth. And as I hand over this discussion to him, I would like to invite you to share your thoughts while we are deeply engrossed in what we are saying. Use the chat box or write to us at contact@bentocoach.com. Over to you, Vikas.
Thank you, Anjani. That was a fantastic introduction to me, but also more importantly to all our panelists. So I'm sure this is going to be a fantastic conversation we're going to have over the next hour or so. My big personal welcome to all the panelists and to everyone else who has made the time to join this call today. I hope you're as eager to see what gets discussed today as I am. And for me, let me first off state that my curiosity about growth has been kindled by, and I'm going to be really forthright here because it is a forthright conversation. It's been fueled by the growth of my ever expanding waist and my ever increasing weight. So I really need answers to what does growth mean to everyone else, because this is what growth means to me, at least at the start of this conversation. But let's move on from there, shall we? Let's first set some boundaries. For example, I suggest we focus ourselves on personal growth as individuals, as opposed to, corporate speak, growth in profits and revenue and dividends and all of that. We will not discuss that. Are we agreed on that? Everyone? Excellent. Then we are all aligned. We are all on the right path then. So we'll focus on growth for us as individuals. And from our dear panelists, what I'd like to learn from you today through this conversation is, your perspectives on growth. And from there, maybe we could take some questions on, the different aspects of growth, and even perhaps learn from you some tips and tricks and techniques and life hacks about how can we go about being on this growth journey. So are you all set, panelists? Looks like we are. Great. But before I ask my first question, can we have a poll for everyone on this call, please? Not just the panelists, but everyone. So Prashant, if you can help us with that, please.
Yep. It's up on the screen.
So you should see a poll on your screen. If you could answer that with as much speed as possible, and then we will share the answers. We'll share the results with you immediately. All the answers are anonymized, so you don't have to worry about who said what, because that's not what matters. Well, it matters, but it's the overall results that matter more.
Shall I end the poll, Vikas?
Sure. And if you could share the results, Prashant.
Yeah, there.
Okay, so what is it looking like? An overwhelming 58% of us feel that our idea of growth is about attaining more maturity and wisdom and find meaning in life. Excellent. We have another 32% who feel that growth is about improving our self-traits, our own characteristics, and then accomplishing tangible goals. And then we have about 5% each who believe that growth is about working towards improvement in conditions of others. And if we just live life, hey, we're growing. What's the big deal? That's what some of us feel. Excellent. This is good. It shows a skew towards a certain kind of point of view. But I think this is a great place for us to start, for me to start asking my very first question. And my first question to all our panelists is going to be, please help, introduce your own personal individual idea of growth through a short sentence, and maybe with an example also. And maybe we could go in alphabetical order. So my first question to Anu, then to Dimple, then Roshan, and then Sadhna. What is your idea of growth? And where does that come from? Any examples that you can share? Go to you, Anu.
Thanks, Vikas, and hi to everyone. Lovely to be here. So, okay, this is a challenging one, right? So to me, if you want to, what does growth mean to me, or what is key to growth? Well, I'm from marketing, so I like a nice tagline. So I think that there are two things that I think are essential to growth and that enable personal growth or development, self-fulfillment, and they are reinvention and resilience. So, and this is just from my own personal point of view, right? So I am what is classically known as a trailing spouse. So I've moved with my husband to a lot of countries. And I started off in advertising in India. And then I found myself in Singapore and I moved to Hong Kong, then in London, we were in Africa and so on. And it is fairly easy, I think, to slip into this sort of beguiling lifestyle and say, okay, you know what, there's too many changes. I can't just keep trying to get in. I mean, all of us know it's hard to break into a new geographic market. Sometimes your experience in one place is not relevant to another place and so on. So I found that sort of reinventing, just looking at your circumstances, trying to work out where you can best use your skills to achieve growth or to make the best use of your time, you know, to put it in a very, very sort of down to earth manner, that really helped me. So, you know, I found myself segueing into public relations, now into, you know, setting up my own agency. And when I was in Africa, I worked for an NGO there. And it's this sort of way of accepting that short-term pain of saying, okay, I'm not on a particular trajectory. This is not the trajectory I imagined I would be on. But that's cool because I now have many opportunities open to me and let me pick a new adventure in each case. So I think that is key to growth, especially when circumstances change quite a lot, right? For all of us, even if we don't move around, even if you're in the same place, circumstances can change mind-bogglingly from one year to another, as we all know over the past 2 years. That's it.
Thank you, Anu. Thank you. A lot for us to think about in terms of reinvention and resilience. And Dimple, may I ask you to share your views?
Yeah, sure. Hi, everyone. It's really wonderful to be here with all of you. So for me, I think growth comes more from within, I have to say. As someone who's working in the creative space, and I've been here in this creative space for about, let's say, the last 5 or 6 years, my daily job is essentially conjuring up fictitious realities, populating it with characters that only live in my head and speak to me. So it's almost an alchemical process. And the reality of it is that there is a very real possibility that the outcome of all of that effort might never actually see the light of day. It's a harsh truth. The road to publishing, unfortunately, is littered, I would say, with the corpses of excellent manuscripts that never made the cut. And you know there's an inevitability to that which is almost depressing. If one thinks about it, so we prefer not to dwell on it, but that is a very real thing. And so in the absence of that kind of external validation, I think it then behooves upon the artist to find that sort of space where you acknowledge and appreciate and, dare I say, celebrate those individual moments of growth in your own trajectory towards creating something which is, which has value and which has meaning. And, the thing is, it doesn't even have to be something monumental or seismic. It doesn't have to be, I finished a novel today. There are very few days when you'll have those kind of days. It'd be something really small, like, I was stuck in a scene and I kind of, for a week and I kind of figured my way out of it, or I wrote the perfect sentence, or I found the perfect metaphor. It can be something as small as that. But the thing is, it is these tiny moments which then provide the motivation that we, as creative people need to sort of show up to work every day. Otherwise, why would we? Why would I wake up in the morning and sit at my desk when I could be, watching Netflix or whatever? There is something to be gained out of these small things, and there's something to be gained out of these tiny moves along this trajectory of creating something and celebrating that. So I think it is a very individual thing. It comes from within, and I think it is for each person to sort of define for themselves what that growth means, what it looks like, and how you assess it, and then how you use that to sort of propel yourself forward into making, a better version of yourself and realizing your potential, if one might call it that. Yeah. So that's me.
Thank you, Dimple. Again, lots for us to dwell on in terms of internal validation, even celebration, and also having our own internal yardstick to look at how much that growth has been, or even what that growth is. Thank you so much for sharing that. Roshan, over to you, please.
Hi, Vikas, and hi, everyone. Thank you for all being here. So, taking forward from where Dimple left off, if you ask me in one word, growth to me means improvement. Improvement in any way, whichever way, whether you look at it vertically, as most of us all do in the beginning when we start off our careers. All we want to do is maximize, work hard, take the pressure, do what it takes to climb that corporate ladder and get somewhere. But of course, it comes with all its pressures and challenges and setbacks that helps us to grow even more as we're going in that direction. But then there's also a time where we grow in a horizontal direction, as in across spectrums, across specializations, and across maybe even different occupations, pursuing a hobby, something that will make you grow, give you some satisfaction, give you an immense amount of pleasure and gratification at the end of it. Yeah, and in my case, say for my example, I worked very hard to do my CA, and being a diabetic, it came with its own set of challenges, and also I'm from an arts background, so anyway, all that happened, and I got through. I was on my pursuing my career, and then I decided with the World Bank, and then I said, there came a point in my life where my priorities changed, and I wanted to focus more on bringing up my children. I said this is a very important time, and so I gave up that, and I started focusing on them. And then I also used some time that I made in between to pursue some interests, to pursue something I never had time to do, like music and drama, foray into theater and things like that. Today, I'm a mother of a teenager, and second one's also almost reaching there. So that itself, I won't say I've stopped growing. I'm growing, in fact, even at a faster pace every day because there's so much to learn, and it's quite daunting. I'm sure anyone who is a parent of teenagers will know first time parents for teenagers. So I'm at that phase right now, and I feel that I've grown a lot, and I'm still growing every day.
Thank you, Roshan. Indeed, the growth journey continues for all of us as it should. And thank you for touching upon the aspects of growth being multidimensional as also multispectral, very important, and how even the idea of growth changes over time with shifting priorities and so on. Thank you for that. Sadhna, your views on your idea of growth, please.
So first of all, thank you very much, Vikas, for having me on this panel today. So the more I think about this topic and having listened to my fellow panelists to responding to your question, the more acutely I realize how intense this topic is and how intense your question is, although it appears, a very simple question. So for me, had you asked me this question, what does growth mean to me at the age of, say, 10, when I was 20, when I was 30, and at the age of 40, for every decade that has passed on, my answer would have been completely different. And the very fact that the definition of growth has changed for me over time, the definition of growth has evolved for me over time, is in itself a proof of my personal growth. And perhaps that's true for most people. So to me, growth is very multidimensional. There is this professional growth, there is personal growth, and we decided today not to focus much on the professional aspects, right? So as you journey through life, if your idea of success starts evolving from earning big bucks, climbing up the corporate ladder, topping the university, going on a luxurious holiday and exotic travel destination, all of that, which is actually centering around me, myself. If our idea of success can change from me to include the rest of the world or to actually embrace that world, and one starts thinking about what am I doing for my family, what am I doing for my team in the office, for that matter, what am I doing for a stranger on the road. I think that really embodies growth as a human being, as a person. And that's truly growth for me. I'm going to end by just saying that, if you go to a shopping mall and we see tons of things or a plethora of things lined up there, waiting for them to be picked up by you, at that particular time, if you're reminded of Socrates' quote, which is, how many things I can do without, that is growth as a human being, that is growth as a person, both with an element of minimalism and an element of thinking for others.
Very profound, Sadhna. Less is more, but equally the idea of growth itself should grow. That, again, will keep us thinking about for a bit. And in this context, thank you everyone for sharing your initial views on the idea of growth itself. There's lots of frameworks out there in the market about, how do you look at growth? How do you grow? How do you analyze growth, and so on and so forth. Just one of these many frameworks says that, in terms of personal growth, there are 5 different aspects to it. One of them is mental, the next is social, the next one is spiritual, then emotional, and then physical. And to all my panelists, perhaps I would like you to reflect on, what you've just shared with us. Would that fall into any one of these 5 buckets, mental, social, spiritual, emotional, physical? When I tried to think about growth from my context, I felt that I found it really difficult to put it into any one bucket, because as long as we think of these buckets as rigid, watertight compartments which do not meet each other, I was actually quite challenged by where do I slot this into. But the minute the idea of these different aspects of growth shifted to something which is more like the interconnected rings of the Olympics logo, then things became a lot easier for me to analyze and think through. But in this context, my next question is about, does growth need an external trigger, an external stimulus, perhaps even a situation of desperation, which then spurs that growth in us, or at least the idea of thinking about growth, it spurs that within us. Even the concept of failure, failure and growth seemingly they can't gel with each other. But maybe there is more to it than that. Maybe failure has a role to play in growth. And perhaps I could speak to Roshan about this. And Roshan, if you could share your views on this topic.
Thanks, Vikas. Yes, I think what you said, definitely there are triggers that, there are the various events that would trigger growth. And many of them are, I wouldn't like to call them negative, but challenges, setbacks, obstacles, and even failure, which do trigger it. And you'll be surprised at the end that how you grew when at that point of time it didn't look like uh, it didn't look so bright at that point of time. Now, taking my example, say I go back 30 years ago when I just graduated. I'd originally planned on taking arts and becoming a lawyer because my whole family is full of solicitors and lawyers. So I went along that trajectory. I'll do law and carry on. By the end of my BA, I started realizing that maybe I don't want to do law. Maybe I want to do something else. I'm interested also in finance. I'm interested in chartered accountancy. And at that point of time, when I graduated, I'd already completed my 5 years. And I walked out of my college. I was in Xavier's in Bombay, and then I joined the firm. I joined Deloitte, and on my first day, everyone was like, "Oh, you've done arts. Acha, it's going to be really tough. Do you know the rate of passing and things like that?" And I didn't know anything of accounts at that time, mind you. I didn't know anything. I didn't even know the debit, credit, and anything like that. So I was quite, you know, of course, everyone asks you, "Okay, are you sure? Are you sure you really want to do this?" And the whole effect of that audit and that atmosphere of seriousness, and it was all quite, I didn't know what to think, but I was quite clear that I'm going to give this a shot. Never mind if only 2% pass, unless I give it my best and give it my all, I'll never know. So my boss, luckily for me, very dynamic, and he asked me once only on my first day, "Are you sure?" I said, "Yes, sir, I'm sure." Then he said, "You know what? People who do arts and science are more likely to pass because they take it more seriously than the ones who do commerce." So here I was wondering with my arts background how I'm going to learn and catch up everything in that much amount of time. But there I went, and you always need somewhere some support, and it will come down to you. When you need for it, you need to look around. You'll get a little bit of support from somewhere, leverage it to its fullest. I had some friends who offered me help. Again, because of my diabetes, I was not able to join the classes that everyone joins. I knew that all my friends were waking up at unearthly hours like 4:30 and all and going. Because I had to take my injections and things like that, I couldn't join it. And there was a time in which I thought, okay, if it doesn't work, let it be, but at least I'll try. Somehow I managed without the classes. And yes, I did have one failure as well. I failed. And I said, oh God, studying all these things again. Again, I looked for the silver lining. Somehow, there also, I happened to get one exemption. So I said, Chalo, this is a sign. Don't give up. Just go forward and go for it. Again, I went next attempt. But I know so many friends who've done so brilliantly in life who haven't cleared as fast as even I did. They've taken so many attempts and they've come through it. I feel those are even stronger than, others who had different issues. So that was one thing. After doing that, of course, I went along my way and I got my jobs. I shifted my city. I came to Chennai, and there I felt, that yeah, things were different. Doesn't have the buzz of Bombay, but still you make the most of where you come from, because if you decide that in your mind, you'll grow wherever you are. So I came with a positive mindset, and there also I grew. I had a lovely job with the World Bank, met some wonderful people, wonderful experiences. And then I decided that, I wanted to start a family. So then, because there was no infrastructural setup, I had to give up my job. At that point of time, I did too. But I said, I have to make the choice. My whole life I've waited. And even from my diabetes angle, I had to wait a couple of years before I got that perfect control. I had to move on to the insulin pump. There were lots of issues that I had to overcome to get there. Then I said, once I've done all this work, it's not worth it if I don't focus on those children that I've taken, worked so hard to have. So I said, I'm going to take the break. I took the break. I left my job and I started looking after my children. And in that time, I also realized now I have more time to pursue my interests, my passion for singing, performing arts. I got an opening into theater, and somehow from there also, things just went ahead and went on, and I kept getting some good opportunities. And that showed me that it's not only TK. I mean, I've left my job, but there's a lot more to grow, and I'm getting so much satisfaction. Even though all these shows and all are, they're not paid, we're not acting as professionals, but it's the pleasure you get when you perform, what it takes to learn, whether it's two lines in a play or the main role. Everything's equally important. So that's how I feel.
That is so really inspiring. Thank you for sharing. Am I the only one who's hearing an echo here?
No, there's an echo from your end, I guess. Probably the admin. Just check.
All right. Hopefully it's gone now. I was just saying, Roshan, in case you didn't hear me the last time around, this was really inspiring a story. So thank you for sharing it with us. I guess it does require a degree of mental resilience, but also the flexibility, the mental flexibility in being able to, take the most of the opportunities that come our way. Sometimes even recognizing that here's an opportunity when we may otherwise not even have noticed it. And as we think about this from a mental perspective, is growth itself a mental thing? Is it an intangible thing? Or is it also, does it also have an external side to it? Something that you can measure in terms of metrics and KPIs and the like. Perhaps I could ask Sadhna to opine on this aspect of growth, please.
So Vikas, I think different people will have a different take on this, but I think it's a mixed bag. So there is no one answer. It's not as if it's only tangible or it's only intangible. And let me try and explain very briefly. So, and you use the word external manifestations. So the standard or stereotypical external manifestations of growth, which is the tangible component, could be a promotion, could be wealth creation, could be lateral growth, broadening your skill sets, etc., etc. But if you look deeper, I don't know if it's happened to any one of you, but it certainly has happened to me that you find someone who's an interesting person, and you find that person interesting because, let's say, he has tremendous knowledge, and not just knowledge but views on varied topics. Or you see somebody jumping and rushing to help others, whether it's in a boardroom setting, another office meeting, or as I said in the beginning, somebody on the streets. Or you notice somebody actually excelling in his or her job, but taking that back seat and letting the team take credit. Each of these is also a tangible manifestation of the so-called atypical growth or the not so stereotypical growth. And what makes these people any different from the rest of the crowd, rest of the people? There are these very particular traits that I have personally noticed. For instance, people who belong to this genre are people who are usually, they have a very high learning agility. They look at problems or challenges as actually opportunities, and convert those challenges into opportunities. These are people who are usually very satisfied and satiated inwardly, and therefore they're not there in the rat race. They're not there to what should I say, compare, or they don't compare themselves with others. I go to a gym, and there is this thing that they've pasted on the gym, and every time you're exercising, you actually can't help notice it. And it says, don't compete with others, compete with yourself. And how true it is, because if I start looking at somebody else who jogs on the treadmill at a speed of 12 or 14, I'm never going to be able to do it. But if I compete with myself and I say, oh, I used to do 6 and now I'm doing 8 and I'm aiming for 9 or 10, that in itself is the tangible growth for me. So those are all the tangible pieces. Intangibly, to answer your question, is there a major for this? Are there KPIs? I personally believe that there aren't really. I mean, each one of us can think of their own KPIs, but for me, it's a very clean look at yourself in the mirror every day and ask yourself, did you learn something new yesterday? Did you do something new, or did you do something differently? And more importantly, did you step out of this me zone, and did you do something for others that made you proud? Forget about how people reacted, what people say. Are you proud of yourself as a person? And that's the litmus test I use, because.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Sadhna, for bringing in those different aspects to this discussion. I think many on this call, if not everyone, will agree with you that partly that there are internal benchmarks, but partly it's not just about me. It's also about me in the larger context of, call it the community, call it the world, the universe, whichever way you want to look at it, and whichever vision of the cosmos you have. And somehow all of these responses kind of seem to be taking me towards Dimple, because Dimple, earlier on, you talked about, two things. One is the concept of internal validation and internal celebration, or even internal benchmarks, if I may use that term. And secondly, the whole idea of adding value, not just to yourself, but to the world around us. So maybe my next question is going to be to you, Dimple. And it's around, what is the role that giving back or paying it forward or adding value to the lives of others, what is the role of those kinds of activities in the realization of growth? And as a sub question to that, is growth itself a scripted journey with a designated destination at the end of it, or is it the journey itself that happens along the way?
Yeah. Is huge for creative people. I mean, I know you'll get that being a creative person yourself. Most of the times, we are sort of stuck in our little gadgets, working on our tiny little projects of art and craft. And, while we would love to have the opportunity to share it with the world at large, we are absolutely thrilled to meet other people who are sort of slaving in the same space. They're sort of our tribe. Who kind of understand the internal demons that we wrestle with every day. Not everybody gets it. It takes a creative person to understand what another creative person goes through. So there is a certain element of, I think, selfishness when you sort of reach out to another creative person to sort of break this mold of isolation that you're otherwise working in. But as a result of that, something magical actually does happen, when creative people come together, because there's this font of creative energy that develops and everybody kind of gets to feed off it. And we understand that the next big idea or the next inspiration can come from these kind of connections. And so that aspect of community becomes really, really very important. And it takes different forms, and it's up to each one of us to sort of become those kind of good citizens, who contribute in our own way in sort of bringing about this collective whole, the sum of the parts, which is bigger than the whole, and adding to this creative energy that allows everybody to grow, as an ecosystem, as there's a communal growth that happens on a much larger scale than just at an individual level. So, so there is that. When it comes to this whole idea of, a scripted journey, I mean, any writer will tell you a script never sticks to what you think it should be or would be. The destination changes, the way you get to the destination changes, what you see along the way changes. You might end up with something very different. I mean, if someone would have told me 20 years ago that I would be working on a novel, I mean, I would have pretty much laughed them out of the room outright. But, here we are. So the thing is, I think a lot of it is, like Roshan and Sadhna said, you have to sort of leave yourself to being open to possibilities. You have sort of your own internal sort of touchstones or talismans that allow you to judge opportunities as they come along. And for me, it's almost always been things like, this whole idea of, am I adding value to myself? Am I learning something new? Am I stretching myself in a way that I wasn't earlier? And then, deciding whether to try something out or not. And then as long as that happens, even if something else doesn't come out of it, at least that you've pushed yourself a little bit further along, in this dynamic aspect of growth. So yeah, so that's it.
Sorry for the delay there while I was unmuting myself. Thanks, Dimple. Thanks for that. Very much like the idea of the unscripted script, where there is a path to follow, but it is part of the entire experience to create that path for ourselves and see what fun comes along the way. In many ways, a very organic process. And this is kind of making me think, and I know some of you may now accuse me of, they say, Puri Ramayan Sunli, and then you ask Sita Konti. But maybe I feel like asking that question now to Anu. Anu, do I even need to worry about what growth is? Is it really all that important? why is it that I should even bother about this whole concept of growth? What would be your views on that?
Growth is natural to everyone, right? Because we were talking about this earlier, right? So when I was trying to figure out what I felt about this topic, and I was reminded of my very unsuccessful attempts to do well in my biology exams in school, and there was this definition that many of us would have memorized, at least if you went to school in India, which is what are the characteristics of living things, right? Living things breathe, living things reproduce, living things respire, living things adapt, and living things grow. So that is one of the fundamental definitions of living things. And it may be Vikas's waistline that definition is referring to, but we are, so that aspiration to grow, right, it's all of us, we feel it's either grow or stagnate. It's like riding a cycle. You're either moving forward or you're falling down. And I think that sense of being, I mean, it's what everyone, Roshan, Sadhana, Dimple, they're all saying is that it's that sense of satisfaction I get at being someone new today that I wasn't yesterday. That gives me the feeling I'm not that in that hamster in the treadmill. And I'm going to a new place, and that life is an adventure still. It's something new, something fresh. That's 100% inbuilt in every living thing, I think, and particularly among people, anybody. I have a colleague called Gia, and she's lovely. She's got this fire. She's brilliant. But every time I have a line manager meeting with her, I'm scared because she'll be like, "What new challenge, Anu? I'm bored." And I'm like, "Come on, Gia, seriously, you're doing a great job, can you?" So it's like that. She exemplifies that yearning to. I want to be someone new. I want to achieve and of course that's from a career perspective, which we're not, strictly focusing on. But I thought she's like, that's what people want nowadays. I mean, in fact, have always wanted.
Thank you. Thank you for connecting me back to biology lessons from school,
So
which
Vikas,
long time.
Can
Yes.
I add something to what
Yes,
Anu
please.
said?
Please do.
Because it was very interesting to hear what she was saying. And for me, when I think about growth, and I'm not looking at the biological growth, and I know Anu also wasn't referring to that in the bigger context, but change is, we all say change is the only constant thing, and change is always going to happen. It's for us to decide whether we will embrace it or we will fight. But the change will take place. But contrary to that, to me, sometimes I feel growth is optional. So what I mean is the change will happen irrespective of what you do, but whether to grow with the same pace or not, it's in our control. And we need to take the reins in our hands to say, yes, things are changing, but I also want to put that change in the right perspective and be able to grow. So I always think change is constant, but growth is optional. And I don't know if that would help the audience to relate to.
No, very, very interesting thoughts. And I was in some of the other reading that I'd done, I was connecting to the whole concept of life, and therefore growth happens not always at a steady pace, but it goes through phases of revolution when it's really fast, and then phases of evolution when it's slightly more slowed in terms of its pace. But growth happens nevertheless. And in some ways, it can be related to both what you shared, Sadhana, and also what Anu shared before that our own response to a situation perhaps determines how much and in which direction we are going to grow. And our own response is probably influenced at that point in time by things around us. In other words, the ecosystem that we are part of at that point in time or during that phase in our lives. And this is kind of making me think about, are there any enabling ecosystems or conducive ecosystems which help nurture growth more than other situations? And in this context, what is the role of the love of a family or the understanding of friends or even the guidance of gurus or the mentoring from a coach or even maybe the benevolence of a bhai from Mumbai. What is the role of all these different factors in growth? And this is an open question to all of you. Who would like to go first? Looks like I'll have to appoint someone to go first.
I think Anu is raising her hand.
Go for it.
Thanks, guys. I was being a good student, school, and raising my hand, and Vikas completely blanked me. Thank you, Vikas.
No experience. I have to grow as a teacher.
No, it was more an observation. I think talking about luck, adversity, and going back to what Roshan said earlier, I just wanted to say, I'm an enthusiastic, if terrible, gardener. And living in London now, all the, we have the roses and things like that. So what happens is if you want to achieve really good growth in a rose bush, for example, you need to prune it. So when you give it that shock, then it really flourishes. So I think that luck and particularly adversity really triggers that revolutionary growth you were talking about. That's just my personal experience as well. When I was setting up the company, I have a couple of great mentors who give me their time and their expertise, just with so much generosity. And he told me, Richard, there will be a major stress test of your organization. You'll be going and going, and there'll be a test when it'll determine if you stand. If you decide that this path is not for you, or if you will really take off. So I do believe that adverse circumstances have that power of taking you to the next, level of personal growth, professional growth, anything.
Mm-hmm.
So Vikas, you asked about mentor.
Yeah, I'd just like to.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
Sorry. Oh, sorry. No, speaking about, mentors and gurus and all of that, I just want to circle back a little bit to what Anu was talking about, growth being a form of reinventing yourself. And sometimes what happens is when you are reinventing yourself, you could find yourself in a position where you are in a completely different environment that is completely alien to you. Like Roshan was talking about when, with her life journey where she was sort of out of her comfort zone. And I think the role of the right mentor or the right guru at that point of time, it's not just for, advice and counseling and motivation and support, but there is an actual teaching that happens, because you are in a new space. You don't have the lexicon, you don't have the technical skills, you don't have the tools, you don't even have the toolbox to put the tools in. And for you to sort of, reinvent the wheel and sort of do all of that from scratch can take a really long time. Whereas the right person, if you can, you call it like an apprenticeship. That's what we do as writers. In the sense, you sit at the foot of the master and you learn. And that learning can really, really speed up the process of getting you ready, to sort of strike out on your own and then create this thing that you want to do, which has value and which is satisfying and all of that. And so, so there is that aspect. And, in relation to that, this whole idea of support systems, growth in adverse circumstances, I think is, those are the stories that we celebrate, where people sort of, against all odds, manage to achieve something. But for those of us who are lucky enough to have those kind of support systems in our lives, whether, family, friends, colleagues, peers, mentors, who give us that space to try something different, to flourish in areas that we didn't think we could. I think, we have to give credit where it's due, that we have that kind of support system, and that they allow us, they even give us permission to do it when we are not probably ready to give ourselves permission, and I think that is a huge, huge thing. For someone starting out in something which is different and which is new and outside their comfort zone, to have that kind of support system from wherever that may come, I think is a huge blessing.
Thank you. Thank you for explaining that in a lot of detail, Dimple. Thank you. And Sadhna, you were going to say something.
I think I'm glad I let Dimple go first, because it's like two great minds think alike. So I was going to say exactly the same, that I think the role is very critical. We all grow, and we grow through our experiences that life teaches us. But if you have a mentor, you have a coach, the coach not just you don't live through his or her experiences, but also the knowledge that that person imparts. So essentially, you are fast tracking your growth if you have the right person to guide you at that time. So my thoughts are very aligned to what Dimple was saying.
Thank you. Great minds think alike. And Roshan, any views on this?
I think it's been beautifully articulated by Dimple, Sadhna, and Anu, and I'm totally with them when it comes to a mentor or a guru. Or, you just need that support. You may find it anywhere. You may not consciously realize this is my mentor, but you may suddenly realize it later that, oh, I was mentored by this person. When it's happening, you may not realize it, but the influence goes into you, and you perform your best, you do your best, you grow, and then you realize later that I was so fortunate to have whether it was your teacher or your parent or your friend or someone to be there for you and guide you. So
True, very true. And I think it's important for us to be reflective in that sense, because the more we are able to reflect on this along the way, the more we can reap the benefits of that learning process or that growth journey that we're all part of. And maybe it's the right time for us to have another poll, because I would like all of us who are on this call to reflect on what this call has so far been about. We are not done yet. There's still more to go. I do have an eye on the clock though. And so before we go anywhere further, can we have the second poll, please? So you should see the poll coming up on your screens now, and if you can respond to it in as quick a time as possible.
I think the answer to this question is going to tell us a lot about the kind of person we are.
That reminds me of, a wise person once said, we don't see the world as it is, we see the world as we are. And maybe in a similar way, our answers to this question might be reflective of that. Prashant, shall we close the poll now? So if you can share the results, please.
Yep, there you go.
Excellent. Thank you for that, Prashant. And what do we see here? We see, oh dear, nobody likes to read self-improvement books. All right, that's something to note. I'm sure publishers of self-improvement books will have a bit of a concern there. But more seriously, folks, looks like quite a few people spread across the different aspects of the spectrum, apart from reading self-improvement books, which are better for shelf improvement on your bookshelf and nowhere else. So quite a few believe that a lot of growth has to happen by experiencing it ourselves, throwing ourselves at the deep end and flailing our arms about, and very soon we'll start to swim. First we'll start to float, and then we'll start to swim, and that will take us to the shore. And that is maybe a good way to recognize that, oh, I was not in a good place, but now I am. So thank you for that, and so on. And then also there's an element of being mindful about it, and also the role of a coach or a mentor or a guru or a guide and all of that. So thank you very much for sharing your responses to this. Like I said before, I am conscious of where we are with the clock, and therefore I would like to, at this point, bring this discussion slowly to a close. I could go on and on because I love the sound of my own voice, but really, it's been an enlightening discussion, but we do need to slowly take it towards the close. And therefore, I would like to first off start by thanking our panelists, Roshan, Sadhna, Dimple, Anu. You're a global panel, really, because amongst you, some are sitting in London, some are in Pune and Mumbai, some are in Chennai, And then also we have someone sitting in Hong Kong. So what a global panel this is. And thank you for sharing your views, opening your both, I think your views came from your hearts, but also from your minds. And that really made it a very thought-provoking conversation. So thank you very much for that. And I'm sure I'm speaking on behalf of all the participants to this call in thanking you for this. And the next thing would be to thank all of you who've made the time to join this conversation, listen to the views of our panelists, and thank you for that. And to the Bento coach for bringing us all together, enabling that and playing the role of enabler with that. I think at this point, it would be right for me to pass the where we started this evening with. So Anjani, over to you.
Thank you very much. I have a very interesting question, and I just want to ask everyone in this room, if you could, in maybe limited words, 5-6 words, type in the chat box, what would the younger self of you be telling yourself when this question was posed to you? What is growth? Just a small sentence, if you could write in the chat box while I do the thank you bit, which is, dear panelists, thank you so much. I was in awe throughout this discussion. Our journeys may have been different, but our quests seem similar. We all want to grow. We all want to grow exponentially. We all want to grow wonderfully in multi-dimensions. And growth obviously cannot be measured, however, it can be felt. The wealth of discussion has left me reeling with ideas for our next Forthright conversation in April. And I'm obviously going to be coming back to you and asking for your thoughts. Thank you, Vikas, for steering us through this insightful, amazing, and seamlessly stitching them together, all these thoughts. Thank you, team, for being amazing always. Thank you, EcoMaven, for conceptualizing this for us. And thank you, audience, for bearing with us. We've had a wonderful 1 hour of this conversation. We really do hope we can have more wonderful moments like that. But looking forward to connecting with you even more. On that note, have a wonderful evening, everyone.